In business, you can do all the right things and still get the wrong outcomes. And it's because the thing that was right to do in this context is the absolute wrong thing to do in this context. And people that come from corporate backgrounds, like myself, get this wrong more than almost anyone I know. So what I'm going to do in this video is just highlight how some of the good behavior things that we do transitioning from corporate into early entrepreneurship keep us from building the business that we really want to, and how you can avoid some of those mistakes. Now, here's something that I see really frequently when it comes to people transitioning from corporate into entrepreneurship. And it is that in corporate, we developed a set of expertise, right? Like we went deep on certain things, whether that was in sales or management, leadership, ops, client success, you name it. But we learned a set of skills and we have knowledge that enabled us to be really good at what we did in the corporate environment. And the challenge is packaging that expertise and marketing that expertise and then selling that expertise and delivering that expertise are all very different skills. Knowing how to do it in the corporate environment is not the same thing as knowing how to package, market, and sell it in the entrepreneurial environment. They call it the paradox of expertise. And that's because it's just a different skill set to take skills to market than it is to actually have the skills in the first place. And there's 5 real big differences that I see between corporate and entrepreneurship. And in the corporate environment, we're often rewarded for making people happy. Right? As a CEO, I had a board to make happy. As an executive, I had a CEO to make happy. As a manager, I've got multiple bosses. Sometimes you've got a team to deal with. You've got internal politics. And so playing the game has value. It allows you to ascend. It allows you to build like the right alliances and do all the things that you need to do to survive and thrive in the corporate environment. And the thing is, in the marketplace with entrepreneurship, no one gives a shit. Right? Like I need you to solve a problem. I'm paying you to solve a problem. And frankly, you might be a bit of an ass, but if you can solve this problem and it's a complex and valuable enough problem for me, I'm going to hire you anyway. That's not going to last in the corporate environment. That's because that's not how that game is played. But the game of entrepreneurship is solve big problems, get paid big money. You just think of it this way. You've got to have a really important brain operation. You go meet with 2 doctors. One of them is a little bit of an ass, right? But he comes across as really sharp, best in the business, has reviews a mile long. And then you talk to somebody else who seems good enough. Seems like a nice doctor, seems like a nice person, probably somebody that you'd enjoy having a beer with. Does their ability to play politics matter to you at all? Does how nice they are matter to you at all? No, what matters to you is how well can you solve my problem? You might very well pick the biggest asshole of a doctor on the planet if you felt like they could solve your problem. And it's really not that different in entrepreneurship. If you're solving complex, complicated problems that actually offer a lot of value, then your ability to play the game that you played in corporate has no merit whatsoever. All people care about is, can you solve my problem? Another big difference, being wrong in corporate gets you fired, right? Like you make a few mistakes, it's pretty easy. Like it's going to show up on your review. It's going to show up on your raises. It's going to show up in, you're making your boss look bad. You're making somebody look bad. Like that's not good politics, right? In the entrepreneurial environment, getting things wrong is literally part of the process. It is how we learn. Like it is the feedback loop that we need to continue to iterate on our product or on our service or on the thing that we are selling. When we are wrong, we take that as a data point and we go, okay, let's make an adjustment. And that's the way that it should work in corporate. And in some environments, you're going to have like a more healthy culture, more entrepreneurial culture. They're going to allow some of that. But the vast majority of corporate environments are going to basically force you to play it safe, because if you make a mistake or if you make a couple of mistakes, it's going to come back to haunt you and maybe even cost you your job. If you are focused on avoiding mistakes as an entrepreneur, you will not move forward in your business. You will stall out because the fear of making a mistake means you're missing out on data. In the corporate environment, we were building systems to basically read the future, right? We wanted predictability. We wanted the forecast. We wanted the reporting. We wanted consistency, right? Because consistency gave us predictability. Predictability gave us the ability to optimize the system. And at a certain point, that absolutely has to be a focus. But early on in entrepreneurship, predictability is a facade. You're rapidly iterating on what it is that you are building in order to make it better. You want to survive in entrepreneurship? You're going to do the opposite. You're going to be flexible. You're going to be agile. You're going to be willing to make changes and adapt to those changes very, very quickly. When you're trying to get a job in corporate, having a really wide skill set is really valuable. And think about it. Like if I can show you on my resume that I am awesome at sales, awesome at marketing, awesome at leading teams, awesome at systematizing things. I show you a really diverse skill set. What you as an employer start to think is, I have a lot of ways to deploy this person's expertise and their knowledge and their experience. And since I'm buying all of your time, that makes you more valuable to me because I have more skills to deploy within the organization. There's more resources that I can use. So I'm going to hire you as a sales manager. But if you've got all these other skills, well, once you get our sales cleaned up, I could see you progressing to the next level or into a different part of the organization. So diversity within your skill set is actually really valuable. When it comes to building a business, when it comes to being an entrepreneur, the last thing you want to do is go to market and say, I am all things to all people and I'm the best at all of them. It is not going to work. As an entrepreneur, you've got to niche down. You've got to focus. You've got to highlight only the strengths and only the skills and the expertise that matter for the problem that you're solving for your clients or your customers. They don't care about the fact that you can also do all of these other things. They're not hiring you and buying all of your time. They're hiring you and buying a solution to a problem. You don't want or need a wide resume. You need a very tight, clean message to a very tight and clean ICP and target market. And that is how you are going to get traction in selling your stuff early on. The wider you go with who it is that you serve and what it is that you do and the problems that you solve, the longer it's going to take to get any traction. And then the fifth big difference between corporate and entrepreneurship. In corporate, you're basically using the sources of leverage that that organization has built and created over time. In entrepreneurship, especially in the 0 to 1 phase, you're creating that source of leverage. It doesn't exist, right? Like when you start out, you oftentimes don't have all of the sources of leverage that you got accustomed to in corporate. I learned this lesson the hard way, right? Like I came from senior executive level roles. So when we had a good idea, when we had a good project, when we had a strategic plan, we all sat around a boardroom and we said, hey, this is excellent. Cool. Now let's go have other people do it because we had other people. We had sources of leverage. We had systems. We had capital. We had labor. We had all the things that we needed to get big projects done. When you sit around the table as an entrepreneur, especially if you're early on or a one-man band, then you're going to look at it and go, wow, I've got 100 great ideas. I don't have the resources to get almost any of these done, and certainly not all of them at the same time. So you've got to create sources of leverage. You've got to find, how am I going to leverage my time? How am I going to create or access the capital that I need to go get labor? How am I going to use one source of leverage, the money, to go get another source of leverage, the people? Because you can't do it all as an entrepreneur. And the people that try to burn out. There's a mindset shift that has to happen very quickly when you go from corporate into entrepreneurship. Is in that corporate environment, maybe you got to delegate everything. Maybe it was already automated for you. As an entrepreneur, you've got to create the systems that make that environment necessary. You've got to figure it out early on when you're strapped for cash or you're strapped for time, right? Like you've got to be very selective and very intentional with how you start stacking sources of leverage so that you can get from 100K to 500K to 1 million to 5 to 10. It is all about asset allocation. And early on, you've got to create the source of leverage because it doesn't exist for you. And if you do it the right way, somebody comes in later on and the thing that you built becomes their corporate environment. And they've got the leverage, the sources of leverage that they need to do the things that you want them to do. Now, for me, 5 years into this, I can look back and say, wow, these were some bad habits or these were some mindset shifts that had to happen in order for me to transition from very successful executive to a very successful entrepreneur. And it took probably a couple of years to like really unwind some of these behaviors and some of the ways that I thought about things that I saw stunting the growth of my business as an entrepreneur. I hope this helps you fast track your process from corporate into entrepreneurship. You can learn from some of my mistakes and some of the lessons that I've learned along the way. And I'd love to hear, like, if any of these resonated, go ahead and drop a comment below. Or if there's some other lessons that you've learned as you've transitioned from corporate into entrepreneurship, let me know what those are. Always looking to learn more ways. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel below. Adios.